Hello everyone, and welcome to Fresh Master Channel. Today, we are going to have some story from Reddit. But before we start, don't forget to subscribe, like the video if you enjoyed it, and leave a comment down below. These simple clips mean a lot to the future of this channel.
The satellite phone crackled to life at 2:47, cutting through the mechanical hum of generators outside the communications tent. Sergeant Ryan Keaton had been elbow-deep in a radio repair when the piercing ring shattered the pre-dawn silence. He dropped his maintenance tools and grabbed the handset before the second ring, muscle memory from 15 years of military service. Keaton here. Static filled the line for a heartbeat before a familiar voice broke through, shaking with barely controlled panic. "Ryan, thank God you answered." Marsha Peterson's voice carried across 8,000 miles of fiber optic cable. "It's about Emily." The wrench clattered to the concrete floor. Emily, his 9-year-old daughter with bright green eyes and her mother's stubborn chin. Ryan's stomach dropped like he'd stepped off a cliff. "What happened?" His voice came out steady despite the ice forming in his veins. "She's here now, at my house. Ryan, she's covered in bruises." The words hit him like incoming artillery. Around the tent, 3 other soldiers pretended to focus on their equipment maintenance, but Ryan caught them stealing glances. News traveled fast in a forward operating base. "Bruises how?" Ryan's grip tightened on the phone until his knuckles went white. "Arms, shoulders, they look like finger marks." Marsha's voice cracked. "She says she fell downstairs, but Ryan, we both know you live in a ranch house. Where's Julia?" "At home, with that new boyfriend of hers, Brandon something or other." Marsha paused, and Ryan heard her take a shaky breath. "Ryan, Emily won't go back. She's been here since yesterday morning. Won't eat more than a few bites, flinches every time someone moves too fast. And she keeps asking if you know where she is." Ryan closed his eyes, seeing his daughter's face the last time he'd video called home 3 weeks ago. She'd seemed distant, distracted. Julia had explained it away as normal kid stuff, adjusting to daddy being gone, acting out for attention, but Emily had always been excited about their calls before. "I'm coming home. Ryan, your deployment doesn't end for 2 months. The military won't. Emergency leave, family crisis. They'll understand. What if they don't approve it?" Ryan's jaw set. "Then I'll go absent without leave. Either way, I'm coming home." Marsha was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice held the tone of a woman who'd raised 3 kids and knew the signs. "She won't tell me exactly what happened, but Ryan, what kind of man puts his hands on a 9-year-old girl hard enough to leave bruises? The kind who doesn't live long enough to regret it," Ryan thought. Out loud, he said, "Keep her safe, Marsha. Don't let anyone take her. I'll be there as soon as I can arrange transport. I won't let anything happen to her. But Ryan, you need to know, Julia called twice yesterday looking for Emily. Emily heard her voice and hid in my hall closet. Wouldn't come out for an hour." "What did you tell Julia?" "That Emily was safe and you'd handle it when you got back. Julia wasn't happy. Started yelling about overstepping boundaries and abduction." Marsha's voice hardened. "I told her maybe she should have worried about boundaries when her boyfriend was putting his hands on her daughter. Thank you. For everything. That little girl is like family to me. You know that. Just get here, Ryan. Get here fast." Ryan ended the call and stared at the phone for 30 seconds, his mind racing through possibilities and logistics. Then he pocketed the device and walked straight toward the commanding officer's tent, his boots crunching on gravel in the pre-dawn darkness. The guard at the CO's tent looked surprised to see him. "Sergeant Keaton, it's 0300 hours. Emergency, need to see Major Williams immediately." "Sir, the Major is—" "Wake him up!" Something in Ryan's voice made the private step aside and duck into the tent. Voices murmured inside. Then Major Williams emerged in his uniform pants and an undershirt, looking alert despite being roused from sleep. "Keaton, what's the nature of the emergency?" "Sir, requesting immediate emergency leave. Family crisis involving my daughter?" Williams studied Ryan's face in the harsh fluorescent lighting. "What kind of crisis?" Ryan's jaw tightened. "My daughter has been physically injured, sir. She's currently with a neighbor and refusing to return home. I have reason to believe she's in immediate danger." "Injured how?" "Physical evidence of systematic mistreatment. Bruising consistent with adult grip marks on her arms and shoulders." Williams was fully awake now. "Has she received medical attention?" "Unknown. She's with a trusted neighbor, but I need to get home to assess the situation and ensure her safety." And the suspected perpetrator? My wife's boyfriend, civilian contractor named Brandon Vexley. Williams nodded slowly. Have you contacted base legal? Not yet, sir. I wanted to secure leave first. Smart thinking. Williams disappeared into his tent and returned with a folder. I'm approving emergency compassionate leave effective immediately. You'll have transport on the next supply flight. That's wheels up at 0800. Thank you, sir. Williams signed paperwork with quick, efficient strokes. Keaton, I'm also recommending you contact JAG as soon as you reach stateside. If what you're describing is accurate, there may be criminal charges involved. Yes, sir. Williams handed him the signed orders, then paused. You said neighbor, not doctor or hospital. You think it's worse than what she's telling people? Ryan met his commanding officer's gaze without flinching. Sir, I know it is. The major nodded grimly. Get your gear. Supply truck leaves for the airfield at 0700. 15 minutes later, Ryan was stuffing his duffel bag with essential gear. Around him, his tent mates worked in respectful silence, understanding the gravity of the situation. Sergeant Torres, a father of twin girls, handed him a satellite phone charger. Keep in touch, brother. Let us know if you need anything. Thanks. Corporal Jackson looked up from his bunk. Keaton, whatever happened to your little girl? Whoever did it? They picked the wrong father to cross. Ryan shouldered his pack. Yeah, they did. As he walked toward the motor pool in the growing dawn light, his phone buzzed with a text from Julia. Heard you're coming home. Marcia is filling Emily's head with lies. We need to talk. Ryan stared at the message, noting what she didn't say. No concern for Emily's injuries. No explanation for the bruises. No apology. Just anger at being inconvenienced. He deleted the message without responding. At 0800 hours sharp, the C-130 Hercules lifted off from Bagram Air Base with Ryan in the cargo hold, surrounded by supply pallets and 3 other soldiers on emergency leave. As Afghanistan disappeared beneath the clouds, Ryan closed his eyes and pictured Emily's face. She was counting on him. She needed him. And for the first time in his daughter's life, Daddy was coming home ready for war. 22 hours later, the commercial airliner touched down at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. Ryan had slept maybe 3 hours during the journey, his mind churning through scenarios and contingencies. He'd made several calls during layovers, to his lawyer, to Marcia, to his sister who lived 2 states away and could provide backup housing if needed. He rented a car at the airport and drove straight toward Fort Holbrook, making the 4-hour drive in just over 3 hours. His phone rang twice, both times Julia's number. He let them go to voicemail. When he finally reached the familiar tree-lined streets of the base housing community, muscle memory guided him toward Marcia Peterson's house rather than his own. The sun was setting, painting the suburban landscape in warm orange tones that belied the darkness of his mission. Emily sat on Marcia's front porch steps, hunched over a book but not really reading. Her dark hair hung like a curtain around her face, and she wore a long-sleeved shirt despite the warm October evening. When she heard footsteps on the sidewalk, she looked up with the wariness of a wounded animal. Then recognition dawned. Daddy? The word came out as barely a whisper, as if she couldn't quite believe it was real. Ryan dropped his duffel bag and opened his arms. Emily launched herself off the porch steps and flew into his embrace. 9 years old and all sharp elbows and knobby knees, but still small enough for him to lift and hold tight. She wrapped her arms around his neck with desperate strength, and Ryan felt her whole body shaking. I'm here, baby. Daddy's here now. You're safe. She buried her face against his shoulder, and he felt hot tears soaking through his uniform shirt. Over Emily's head, he saw Marcia Peterson standing in her doorway, wearing a grim expression that confirmed his worst fears. Emily, sweetheart, Ryan said softly. Let me talk to Mrs. Peterson for just a minute. I'm not going anywhere. Just right here on the porch where you can see me. Emily's grip tightened. Don't leave me. I won't. I promise, see? I'll sit right here on the porch rail and you can sit right there on the steps, close enough to touch. Reluctantly, Emily allowed him to set her down, but she immediately claimed the step closest to where he perched on the porch railing. Marcia approached with careful, measured steps. Show me, Ryan said quietly. Marcia glanced at Emily, who nodded permission with the solemn gravity of a child forced to grow up too fast. Gently, Marcia rolled up Emily's sleeves. Ryan's vision went red. Purple and yellow bruises circled both of Emily's thin arms like dark bracelets. The marks were clearly defined, adult finger marks on her upper arms, thumbprints on the inside. On her left wrist, 4 parallel lines showed where someone had gripped hard enough to leave distinct finger impressions. When? Ryan's voice came out as a growl. Tuesday night, Marcia said. She showed up here Wednesday morning around 7, said she'd fallen downstairs. Ryan looked at his daughter. We don't have stairs in our house. Emily stared at her sneakers. I know, but I didn't want Mrs. Peterson to worry. What really happened? Emily was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was so small Ryan had to lean forward to hear her. He said I stole money from his wallet. Did you? No, Daddy. I never steal. You taught me that. What did Mommy say when he told her that? She got really mad. Started yelling at me. Called me a liar and a thief. Emily's voice broke. She said I was an embarrassment and that she was tired of my behavior problems. Ryan's hands clenched into fists. What did Brandon do while she was yelling? He smiled, like he was happy Mommy was mad at me. Then when she went to get a drink, he grabbed my arms really tight and said I needed to learn respect for adults. Then what happened? Emily wrapped her arms around her knees. He dragged me to the front door and pushed me outside. Said I could come back when I was ready to apologize and admit I stole from him. For how long? All night. It got really cold, and I didn't have shoes or a jacket. I sat on the side steps because I thought maybe Mommy would see me and let me in. Marcia's voice was thick with emotion. Mrs. Patterson found her at dawn, sitting on your front sidewalk. Brought her straight here. Where was Julia while you were outside all night? Emily finally looked up at him, her green eyes bright with unshed tears. Sleeping. Brandon told her I ran away because I was mad about getting in trouble. He said kids do that sometimes and I'd come back when I got hungry enough. Ryan stood abruptly, pacing to the far end of the porch to keep from putting his fist through something. When he had his voice under control, he returned and knelt in front of his daughter. You're going to stay here with Mrs. Peterson tonight. Tomorrow, we're going to go see some people who are going to help us make sure this never happens again. Are you going to talk to him? Ryan's smile was cold as winter steel. Oh, yes, sweetheart. Brandon and I are definitely going to have a conversation. Will you get in trouble? Don't you worry about that. That's grown-up stuff. Your job is just to stay safe and let me handle everything else. Emily nodded, but her expression was troubled. Daddy, what if Mommy doesn't want me anymore? The question hit Ryan like a physical blow. He gathered his daughter into his arms again, holding her tight. Listen to me, Emily Grace Keaton. You're the most important thing in the entire world. Nothing, and I mean nothing, is ever going to change that. Whatever happens with Mommy, you will always be loved and wanted and safe. Do you understand me? Yes, Daddy. Good girl. Now, Mrs. Peterson is going to make us some dinner, and then you're going to tell me everything that's been happening while I was away. Every single detail. After Emily fell asleep on Marcia's couch 3 hours later, Ryan and Marcia sat at her kitchen table while she filled in the gaps. The picture that emerged made Ryan freeze. It started about a month after you deployed, Marcia said. Julia met Brandon at some military spouse fitness group. He's a contractor, does renovations on base housing. Charming, handsome, seemed to really understand the challenges of military life. When did he move in? Officially, about 6 weeks ago. But he was staying over most nights before that. Marcia poured herself another cup of coffee with shaking hands. Emily started coming over here more often. Said she was bored at home. But I could tell something was off. How so? She was jumpier, more withdrawn, started flinching when people raised their voices, even in excitement. And she stopped talking about home. Before, she'd always chat about what she and Julia had done together, movies they watched, that sort of thing. Suddenly, nothing. Did you see signs of previous injuries? Nothing like this. But last week I noticed she had scratches on her neck. When I asked about them, she said she'd fallen off her bike. Except I knew Julia had taken her bike to be repaired 2 weeks earlier. Ryan pulled out his phone and scrolled to Julia's contact. Did she try to get Emily back? Oh yes, called here twice yesterday, demanding I send Emily home immediately. When I refused, she threatened to call the police and have me arrested for abduction. What did you tell her? That Emily was safe, and if she wanted to discuss the situation, she could wait until you got home. Marcia met his eyes. Ryan, I've been a military spouse for 30 years. I've seen families deal with all sorts of stresses, but this isn't deployment stress or adjustment issues. This is systematic intimidation of a child. Ryan's phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Heard Daddy came home early. Your wife's quite the screamer when she's worried. Funny thing about military wives, they get so lonely. B.A.B. Ryan stared at the message, his vision going red around the edges. Then he took a screenshot and forwarded it to his lawyer with a message. Evidence of maltreatment. More to follow. He looked up to find Marcia watching him with concern. What is it? Brandon just made a tactical error. Ryan pocketed his phone. He thinks he's dealing with some helpless military spouse and her absent husband. He has no idea what's coming. Ryan stood and walked to the window facing his house 3 streets over. Brandon's black F-150 pickup truck sat in the driveway like a middle finger aimed at the world. Julia's Honda was parked beside it. As he watched, the front door opened and 2 figures emerged. Julia and Brandon laughing about something as they walked toward their cars, going out for the evening while their daughter recovered from misuse in a neighbor's house. Ryan's phone rang, Julia's number. Ryan, thank God you're home. We need to talk. Do we? Yes, there's been a huge misunderstanding. Emily's been telling stories, and Marcia Peterson has completely blown things out of proportion. Stories about what? About Brandon. She's making up lies because she doesn't like him. You know how kids get when there's a new man around? Ryan's voice was deadly calm. Tell me about the bruises. What bruises? The finger-shaped bruises around both her arms. The ones that match adult grip marks. Julia was silent for a moment. She fell down. Kids fall down all the time. From what stairs, Julia? We live in a ranch house. Look, we really need to talk about this in person. Not over the phone. We'll talk. In court. What? Check your front door. Legal papers should be there. Emergency custody petition. You can't do this. Already did. Emily stays with me until a judge determines whether you're fit to parent her. I am fit. Brandon said she was just acting out for attention. Brandon said a lot of things. We're going to examine all of them very carefully. Ryan hung up and immediately dialed another number. Derek Chen. Derek, it's Ryan Keaton. Ryan, I thought you were deployed in Afghanistan. Emergency leave. I need a favor. Name it. Background check and surveillance on a target, thorough and fast. What kind of target? Brandon Vexley, civilian contractor, works renovation projects on military bases. Currently involved with my wife. Personal or professional interest? He put his hands on my daughter. The line was quiet for a long moment. Derek had served 2 tours with Ryan in Iraq before transitioning to private investigation work. He understood exactly what those words meant. I'll be there by noon tomorrow. Send me everything you have on him. Already compiling it. Derek, this needs to be comprehensive. I want to know everywhere he's been, everyone he's worked for, every family he's been involved with. You think there are other sufferers? Men like this don't start with children. They work up to it. Understood. Ryan, whatever you're planning, I'm not planning anything except protecting my daughter and making sure this never happens again. Good. Because if you were planning something, I'd have to remind you that prison uniforms don't look good on anyone. Ryan managed a grim smile. Message received. After ending the call, Ryan walked back to the living room where Emily was sleeping on Marcia's couch. Her face looked peaceful for the first time since he'd arrived, but even in sleep, her hands were clenched into small fists. He knelt beside the couch and gently brushed her hair back from her forehead. I'm here now, baby girl, he whispered. Daddy's going to fix everything. Some lines should never be crossed. Brandon Vexley had just sprinted over every single one. Ryan was awake at 0500 the next morning, his internal clock still running on military time. He'd slept in Marcia's guest room, but sleep had been elusive. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Emily's bruises and heard her small voice describing the night she'd spent locked outside. During the sleepless hours, Ryan had been conducting his own preliminary investigation. The pattern was becoming clear. Vexley was a systematic hunter who had refined his approach over years. Each new base, each new deployment cycle brought fresh opportunities. Military families were perfect targets. Isolated spouses dealing with stress, children craving male authority figures, and fathers thousands of miles away and unable to intervene. Ryan had also spent time reviewing Emily's recent behavioral changes through a new lens. Things Julia had dismissed as acting out now looked like classic symptoms of ongoing intimidation. Emily's reluctance to video call, her sudden preference for staying at Marcia's house, her decreased appetite that Julia attributed to picky eating phases, all of it painted a picture of a child living in fear. He made coffee quietly and was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop when Marcia emerged in her bathrobe. "You're up early." "Military habit." Ryan gestured to his computer screen. "I've been researching. Find anything useful?" Brandon Vexley, age 34, originally from Ohio, Army veteran, discharged 6 years ago with an honorable service record. Clean credit, no criminal background that shows up in standard searches. Sounds like a model citizen. On paper, but I'm looking deeper. Ryan turned the laptop to show Marcia a series of social media profiles. 3 different Facebook accounts over the past 5 years, all with different relationship statuses. Each one shows him in what appears to be a serious relationship with a different military spouse. Marcia sat down with her coffee. "That's not necessarily criminal." "No, but it's a pattern. Each relationship lasted between 8 and 14 months, all ended abruptly with the women blocking him on social media. Any way to contact these women? Working on it. But look at this." Ryan clicked to another tab showing a local news article. 2 years ago, Columbus, Ohio, military spouse named Rebecca Torres filed a report claiming her live-in boyfriend physically intimidated her 8-year-old son. The boyfriend's name was redacted from the public record, but the timeline matches Vexley's employment history in that area. What happened with the case? Charges were dropped when the child recanted his statement. Family moved to California shortly after. Ryan pulled up another document. But here's what's interesting. I found the mother's blog from that time period. She wrote about feeling isolated and confused, about everyone telling her she was overreacting, about her son suddenly becoming withdrawn and afraid. Marcia leaned forward. Does she mention the boyfriend specifically? Not by name, but she describes his behavior pattern. Charming to adults, controlling with the child. She talks about how he would punish her son for disrespect in ways that seemed harsh, but were always framed as necessary discipline. Ryan scrolled through the blog entries. "Look at this post from 3 months before they left Ohio," he read aloud. "Tommy asked me yesterday if we could move back to Grandma's house. When I asked why, he said he's tired of walking on eggshells. An 8-year-old shouldn't know that phrase. I'm starting to wonder if I made a terrible mistake bringing a man into our home before Tommy was ready. But everyone says kids need father figures, and B has been so good to me. Maybe Tommy just needs more time to adjust." "B," Marcia said grimly. "Brandon. Gets worse." Next entry, a week later. "Had to take Tommy to urgent care today. He had bruises on his back that he claimed came from falling off his bike. But the bike has been broken for 2 weeks. When the doctor asked him about it, Tommy looked terrified and stuck to his story. I don't know what to think anymore." She knew something was wrong. But look at the final entry before the blog goes dark. Ryan clicked to the last post. "B says Tommy has been telling lies about him to get attention. Says military kids often act out when they feel insecure about their mother's dating. The family counselor B found agrees that Tommy needs firmer boundaries. I've decided to stop questioning every little thing and trust the man I love. Maybe I've been overthinking everything." Marcia stared at the screen. He isolated her from her own instincts. Classic manipulation. Make the mother doubt herself, make the child the problem, position himself as the solution. Ryan bookmarked the blog. "I'm going to find Rebecca Torres. If she'll talk, her testimony could be crucial." Marcia leaned back in her chair. "You think he's done this before?" "I think Brandon Vexley has been perfecting his technique for years. Military spouses are ideal targets, isolated from family support, dealing with deployment stress, desperate for adult companionship. And the children are collateral damage until they become inconvenient." Ryan's phone rang. Major Patricia Santos from the base legal office. "Sergeant Keaton, I understand you need to speak with someone about a family law matter." "Yes, ma'am. Emergency custody situation involving my daughter. Can you be here at 0900? I'll need to see documentation of the alleged misuse." "I'll be there. Bring your daughter if she's comfortable coming. Sometimes it's helpful for us to assess the child's demeanor directly." "Understood." After the call, Ryan went to check on Emily. She was awake, sitting up on the couch and staring out the window toward their house. "Morning, sweetheart. How did you sleep?" "Okay." She turned to him with serious eyes. "Is today when we go talk to the people who help kids?" "That's right. Are you ready for that?" Emily nodded solemnly. "Will you be with me the whole time?" "Every single second." And if you get scared or uncomfortable, we stop immediately. This is about helping you, not making things worse. What if they don't believe me? Ryan sat beside her on the couch. Do you remember what I taught you about telling the truth? That it's always the right thing to do, even when it's hard. That's right. And when you tell the truth, the right people will always believe you. The people we're going to see today, their job is to protect kids and help families. They've heard stories like yours before. Other kids have had this happen? Unfortunately, yes. But that means these people know how to help. Emily was quiet for a moment. Daddy, will Mommy get in trouble? I don't know, sweetheart. That's up to the judge to decide. I don't want her to get in trouble. I just want to be safe. Ryan pulled her into a hug. That's exactly what we're going to make sure happens. At 0900 sharp, Ryan and Emily sat in Major Santos's office at the base legal center. Santos was a small woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that Emily seemed to respond to immediately. Emily, I want you to know that this is a safe place, Santos began. Nobody here is going to hurt you or make you do anything you don't want to do. My job is to listen to what happened and help figure out how to keep you safe. Does that sound okay? Emily nodded, staying close to Ryan's side. Can you tell me about the bruises on your arms? Emily looked at Ryan, who nodded encouragingly. In a steady, clear voice, she described the events of Tuesday night. Santos took careful notes, occasionally asking gentle, clarifying questions. Emily, when Brandon grabbed your arms, did it hurt? Yes, really bad. I cried, but he said if I didn't stop crying, he'd give me something real to cry about. Had he ever grabbed you like that before? Emily hesitated. Not that hard, but sometimes he would grab my shoulder or my wrist when he wanted me to listen to him. Did you tell your mother about those times? I tried. But she said I was being dramatic and that Brandon was just trying to help me learn manners. Santos looked at Ryan. Sergeant Keaton, I'm going to recommend immediate emergency custody. This is clear evidence of physical mistreatment, and the child's mother appears to have failed in her duty to protect. What's the next step? I'll file the paperwork this morning. You should have temporary full custody by this afternoon. Mrs. Keaton will be served with papers requiring her to appear in family court next week. And Brandon? That's more complicated. Technically, he has no legal relationship to Emily, so standard custody law doesn't apply. However, if we can prove he committed attack on a minor, that becomes a criminal matter. Santos handed Ryan a business card. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, pediatric psychologist. She specializes in documenting misuse cases. I've already called her. She can see Emily this afternoon. As they left the legal office, Ryan's phone buzzed with a call from Derek. I'm in town. Where do you want to meet? Starbucks on Main Street, 1100 hours? I'll be the guy with the surveillance photos. Ryan found Derek at a corner table looking like any other businessman with his laptop and coffee. But Ryan recognized the tactical awareness in his posture, always facing the entrance, back to a wall, hands free. Thanks for coming. Wouldn't miss it. Tell me about your target. Ryan laid out everything he knew about Brandon Vexley while Derek took notes and occasionally asked pointed questions. Okay, Derek said finally. I've got good news and interesting news. Good news first. Your boy's got a pattern. I found 2 of the previous military spouses, both willing to talk, both with stories that match what you're describing. And the interesting news? CPS has been involved before. Same caseworker each time, a woman named Lisa Hayworth. All cases were closed with findings of unsubstantiated claims or insufficient evidence. Ryan leaned forward. That's unusual? Very. Child misuse cases typically get thorough investigation, especially when there are multiple reports, but all 3 cases involving Vexley were closed within 2 weeks of being opened. Corruption? Possibly. I'm working on financial records now. But there's something else. Derek pulled out his phone and played an audio recording. This is from yesterday afternoon. Vexley met with someone at a coffee shop downtown. The recording was clear. Vexley's voice. This military guy's making noise. Emily's father is back from deployment, and he's asking questions. A woman's voice responded. How much does he know? Too much. If this thing goes to court, I need you to handle it like before. Same strategy? Exactly. Troubled child, acting out because daddy's been gone too long. Make her the problem, not me. That's going to cost extra. This is getting complicated. Price is no object, just make it go away. Ryan stared at the phone. That's Lisa Hayworth? Confirmed. CPS caseworker with 15 years experience and a reputation for closing cases quickly. Derek pocketed the phone. Ryan, this isn't just about your daughter. This is a systematic corruption scheme. Evidence? Working on it. Give me another 24 hours and I'll have bank records, communication logs, and detailed histories on all 3 previous cases. Ryan's phone buzzed. Text from Julia. Ryan, please. We need to talk. Brandon says there's been a misunderstanding. Can we meet somewhere neutral? Ryan showed the message to Derek, who grinned coldly. They're worried. That's good. Worried people make mistakes. What do you recommend? Public place, recorded conversation, and let them dig their own grave. Ryan typed back. Denny's on Route 9. 1 hour. Bring Brandon. Julia's response came immediately. Thank you. We'll explain everything. Famous last words, Derek murmured. The Denny's on Route 9 was chosen specifically for its visibility and security cameras. Ryan arrived first, selecting a booth with clear sightlines to all entrances and a view of the parking lot. He had 2 recording apps running on his phone and a backup device in his shirt pocket. Julia and Brandon arrived 15 minutes later, both looking like they'd dressed for a job interview. Julia wore a conservative blue dress, and Brandon had on khakis and a button-down shirt, the picture of respectable suburban Americans. They slid into the booth across from Ryan, Julia immediately reaching across the table as if to take his hand. He pulled back. Ryan, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. Talk? Brandon leaned forward with what was probably supposed to be a charming smile. Sergeant Keaton, I think we got off on the wrong foot. I want you to know how much I respect your service and your dedication to this country. Cut the politician act and tell me about Emily. Brandon's smile faltered slightly. That's exactly what we want to discuss. I'm afraid there's been a serious misunderstanding. Explain, Julia jumped in, speaking quickly as if she'd rehearsed this. Emily's been struggling with your deployment more than we realized. She's been acting out, telling stories for attention, trying to get sympathy from neighbors. When she claimed I was being mean to her, Brandon tried to help by providing some structure and discipline that she clearly needed. Structure and discipline that left bruises on her arms? Kids bruise easily, Brandon said smoothly, his tone taking on the practiced cadence of someone who'd made this argument before. Emily's always been clumsy, and she has that pale skin that shows every bump and scrape. You know how dramatic children can be about minor injuries. Ryan's voice was deadly quiet. Are you claiming she gave herself finger-shaped bruises around both arms? I'm saying kids hurt themselves playing, and then make up stories about how it happened when they want attention or sympathy. Brandon spread his hands in a gesture meant to appear reasonable. It's basic developmental psychology. Children create elaborate narratives to explain things they don't understand or to manipulate situations in their favor. And spending the night locked outside? Julia shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Brandon before answering. She wasn't locked out, Ryan. That's part of the story she made up. She ran away after we disciplined her for stealing money from Brandon's wallet. We thought she was hiding somewhere in the neighborhood to scare us and make us worry. What money? Brandon pulled out his wallet with theatrical precision and showed Ryan a $20 bill. This was missing from my wallet Monday evening. Emily was the only one who'd been in our bedroom that day, going through my things while I was in the shower. Did you see her take it? No, but it was the only logical explanation. The money was there in the morning, gone by evening, and Emily had been unsupervised in the house. Brandon's voice took on a lecturing tone. Sometimes parenting requires making difficult decisions based on circumstantial evidence and patterns of behavior. I'm sure you understand that military leadership often works the same way. You can't always wait for absolute proof before taking action. Ryan studied the $20 bill Brandon was holding. Something about it nagged at him, but he couldn't immediately place what. Here's what I understand, Ryan said. Emily has never stolen anything in her life. She's also never been a liar. But she came home from your house covered in bruises and so traumatized she won't go back. Ryan, please, Julia said, her voice taking on a pleading quality. I know this looks bad from the outside, but you have to understand, being a single parent while you're deployed has been incredibly difficult. The loneliness, the stress of managing everything alone, Emily acting out because she misses you. Brandon has been trying to help us both, and sometimes his approach seems too strict because he has experience with troubled children. Experience with troubled children? Brandon nodded confidently. I've worked with military families for years. I understand the unique challenges deployment creates. Children often develop behavioral issues when their fathers are absent. It's well-documented psychology. They test boundaries, act out for attention. sometimes even create elaborate fantasies about being mistreated. His intentions? Ryan's voice rose slightly, causing other diners to glance their way. His intentions were to terrorize my daughter. Brandon's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. Your daughter needs discipline, Sergeant. She's been spoiled and coddled her entire life, and without a strong male authority figure around to provide structure, she was heading down a very concerning path. Father figure? Someone has to teach her respect for authority and consequences for actions. Brandon's voice took on an almost evangelical fervor. Julia's too emotionally invested to provide proper discipline. And with you gone most of the time on various deployments, Emily was becoming increasingly unmanageable. She was manipulative, defiant, and frankly disrespectful to adults. Ryan felt his control slipping. And your method of providing structure was to grab her hard enough to leave bruises and then lock her outside all night. I removed her from an escalating situation until she was ready to calm down, apologize, and accept responsibility for her actions, Brandon said coldly. It's called natural consequences, and it's a proven behavioral modification technique. Sometimes children need to experience discomfort to understand that actions have repercussions. Natural consequences for a crime she didn't commit? She committed the crime. The evidence was circumstantial but clear, and her refusal to admit guilt showed exactly the kind of manipulative behavior that needed to be addressed immediately. That's when Ryan noticed it. The $20 bill Brandon kept waving around had something written in the corner. He pulled out his phone and showed them a photo Emily had taken the week before of her piggy bank with her carefully counted allowance money. This is Emily's savings from her allowance and birthday money. Notice anything? Julia squinted at the photo. I don't understand what you're trying to show us. Look at the $20 bill in the top of the stack in Emily's piggy bank. Brandon went very still. It has your initials written in the corner. BV. Emily saved that specific bill because you gave it to her last month for helping you carry groceries from your truck. She told me she thought it was special because it came from her mom's friend and she was planning to save it forever. The silence stretched for 30 seconds as the implications sank in. Brandon's face had gone pale, while Julia stared at the photo in growing horror. Finally, Brandon spoke, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. That proves nothing conclusive. She could have taken it from my wallet and then claimed it was a gift when confronted. Could have, but didn't. Ryan pocketed his phone. Emily told me all about that money the night I got home. She's been saving it along with her allowance and birthday money to buy Julia a birthday present next month. She had it all planned out, a necklace from the jewelry store at the mall. Julia's face went white. Oh my God. Ryan, oh my God. Yeah, oh my God. Ryan stood up slowly. You accused my 9-year-old daughter of stealing money she was planning to spend on her mother's birthday gift. Money you gave her yourself. Money she treasured because she thought it represented your friendship with our family. Brandon stood as well, his composure finally cracking. Listen here, soldier boy. You've been gone for 6 months while I've been here dealing with your family's problems. Julia needed a man around, and Emily needed discipline. If you can't handle that reality, maybe you should have thought about it before choosing a career that keeps you away from home. Brandon, please, Julia whispered. Just stop talking. But Brandon was past caring about discretion. Your wife was lonely, your daughter was out of control, and I stepped up to handle what you couldn't. If that bruises your military ego, that's your problem, not mine. My military ego? Yeah, you military guys are all the same. Think you're heroes while other men do the real work at home. Ryan smiled, and Brandon should have recognized the danger in that expression. Other men like you? Damn right like me. I've been taking care of your family while you were playing soldier halfway around the world. Taking care of them? Somebody had to. Julia needed adult companionship, and Emily needed a firm hand. Adult companionship. Ryan's voice was conversational now, which anyone who knew him would have recognized as a warning sign. Like the kind you texted me about? Quote, your wife's quite the screamer when she's worried. Julia gasped. Brandon, you didn't. Brandon's face flushed red. I was just trying to get under his skin. Successfully, Ryan said. But here's the thing, Brandon. I've been recording this entire conversation. Ryan froze, his stomach turning. So now I have you on record admitting to putting your hands on my daughter, locking her outside overnight, and making some references about my wife. Ryan pulled out his phone and stopped the recording app. I also have you claiming parental authority over a child you have no legal relationship to. You can't record people without their consent. Actually, in this state, I can. One-party consent law. Ryan pocketed the phone. See you in court. As Ryan walked toward the exit, Brandon called after him. You think you've won something? Your marriage is over, soldier boy. Julia will never forgive you for this. Ryan paused at the door and turned back. My marriage ended the night you put your hands on my daughter. Julia made her choice when she believed you over Emily. Outside in the parking lot, Ryan sat in his car for 5 minutes, letting his hands stop shaking. Then he called Major Santos. I have a recording you need to hear. 2 days later, Ryan sat in family court with Major Santos, while Julia and Brandon faced Judge Rebecca Martinez across the courtroom. The emergency custody hearing had been expedited due to the evidence of child misuse. We're here regarding the emergency custody petition for Emily Keaton, Judge Martinez began. Sergeant Keaton alleges his daughter suffered systematic physical misuse while in her mother's care. Santos stood. Your Honor, we have medical documentation, photographic evidence, witness statements, and recorded admissions confirming the misuse of this minor child. She presented the file, including Emily's medical records from Dr. Walsh, photos of her injuries, and transcripts of the Denny's conversation. Judge Martinez reviewed the materials with increasing displeasure. Mrs. Keaton, do you dispute that these injuries occurred while your daughter was in your care? Julia glanced nervously at Brandon. Your Honor, I was unaware of the extent of Emily's injuries at the time. You were unaware that your daughter had finger-shaped bruises around both arms? Brandon told me she had fallen, and I didn't examine her carefully. You didn't examine injuries to your own child? I trusted his assessment of the situation. Judge Martinez turned to Brandon. Mr. Vexley, what authority did you have to discipline this child? Brandon straightened his shoulders. Julia asked me to help provide structure and guidance. The child was out of control. Out of control how? Lying, stealing, showing disrespect to adults, Santos interjected. Your Honor, the alleged theft has been proven false. The money in question was a gift from Mr. Vexley to the child. Judge Martinez looked at Brandon sharply. Is this true? Brandon's lawyer whispered something to him. I may have given her money at some point, but that doesn't mean she didn't take additional money later. Do you have any evidence she took additional money? The $20 bill was missing from my wallet. The same $20 bill you admit giving her as a gift? Brandon was quiet. Mr. Vexley, I'm going to ask you directly. Did you physically grab this child hard enough to leave bruises? I used appropriate physical guidance to remove her from a situation where she was being defiant. Appropriate physical guidance that left finger-shaped bruises on a 9-year-old's arms. Sometimes children require firm handling. And did you require her to remain outside overnight? I removed her from the house until she was ready to accept responsibility for her actions. Chepui. Martinez's voice turned icy. You locked a 9-year-old child outside overnight in October weather? I didn't lock her out. She chose to stay outside rather than come in and apologize. How was she supposed to come in if you had removed her from the house? Brandon realized his mistake too late. She could have knocked. While you and her mother were asleep? Brandon's lawyer put a hand on his arm, but Brandon shook him off. Look, Your Honor, this child has been manipulating everyone with her sob story. Military kids are notorious for acting out when their fathers are deployed. She was looking for attention and sympathy. By giving herself finger-shaped bruises? By exaggerating minor incidents and creating dramatic narratives about them. Santos stood again. Your Honor, we have additional evidence regarding Mr. Vexley's pattern of behavior with other military families. She presented Derek's research, including testimony from the 2 previous sufferers and documentation of Lisa Hayworth's involvement. Judge Martinez reviewed the new evidence with growing anger. Mr. Vexley, are you acquainted with CPS caseworker Lisa Hayworth? Brandon went pale. She may have investigated some false claims against me in the past. False claims that were mysteriously dismissed despite evidence of misuse? I was never found guilty of anything. Because the cases were closed before proper investigation could occur, Judge Martinez held up bank records. The same caseworker who received monthly payments of $5,000 from your construction company? Brandon's lawyer was frantically whispering to him now, but Brandon seemed determined to dig his own grave. I don't know anything about any payments. Santos played the coffee shop recording. Brandon's voice filled the courtroom. "If this thing goes to court, I need you to handle it like before. Make her the problem, not me." The courtroom was dead silent when the recording ended. Judge Martinez looked at Brandon with undisguised disgust. "Bailiff, place Mr. Vexley under arrest for conspiracy to obstruct justice, child endangerment, and attempting to corrupt a public official." As handcuffs were placed around Brandon's wrists, he turned to glare at Ryan. "You think you've won? This isn't over." Ryan stood slowly. "Yeah, it is." As Brandon was led away, Judge Martinez turned to Julia. "Mrs. Keaton, your custody rights are hereby suspended pending completion of court-ordered parenting classes and psychological evaluation. Sergeant Keaton is awarded full temporary custody." Outside the courthouse, Julia approached Ryan with tears streaming down her face. "Ryan, I'm so sorry. I didn't know he was hurting her. I swear I didn't know." Ryan pulled out his phone and showed her the photos of Emily's bruises again. "You saw her every day. You helped her get dressed. You gave her baths. What exactly didn't you see?" Julia stared at the photos, her face crumpling. "I was so lonely. He was so charming, so attentive. He made me feel special. More special than your daughter's safety? I thought he said he was trying to help, that Emily needed discipline because she was acting out about your deployment. And when she came to you with bruises and said he hurt her, he convinced me she was lying for attention. He had explanations for everything." Julia collapsed onto a bench. "Oh God, what have I done?" Ryan sat beside her, but didn't offer comfort. "You chose to believe a man you'd known for 2 months over the daughter you gave birth to. I know, and I hate myself for it. Hating yourself doesn't help Emily." Julia looked up at him with desperate eyes. "Can you ever forgive me?" Ryan was quiet for a long moment. "Julia, forgiveness isn't something you get to ask for. It's something you earn through actions. You want forgiveness? Prove to Emily that you'll choose her safety over your convenience. Prove you can be the mother she deserves. How? That's for you to figure out. But it starts with accepting that you failed her when she needed you most." Ryan stood to leave, then paused. "One more thing. If you ever, and I mean ever, put any man ahead of Emily's well-being again, I will make sure you never see her unsupervised for the rest of her childhood." Julia nodded through her tears. "I understand." 6 months later, Ryan sat in District Attorney Sarah Chen's office as she outlined the final charges in what had become known as the Fort Holbrook corruption case. The investigation had expanded far beyond what anyone initially imagined. "Brandon Vexley is facing 24 counts across multiple jurisdictions," Chen said, consulting her thick case files. "A child endangerment in 7 cases, conspiracy to obstruct justice, attempting to corrupt public officials, witness intimidation, and 3 counts of fraud related to his contracting business. What about the other families?" "All 6 previous families have come forward. We're looking at a pattern of systematic misuse spanning 8 years and 5 military installations." Chen shook her head in disgust. This man didn't just target individual families. He researched deployment schedules, attended military spouse support groups, even volunteered for base family events. He literally turned our support systems into hunting grounds. Ryan had spent the past months working with federal investigators to map Vexley's complete operation. What they'd discovered was more sophisticated and far-reaching than anyone had initially suspected. Vexley had maintained detailed files on potential targets, tracking deployment schedules, family dynamics, and even children's behavioral patterns. "The psychological evaluation came back," Chen continued. "Dr. Morrison classified him as a calculated hunter with antisocial personality disorder. His targeting of military families was deliberate. He knew fathers would be absent, and mothers would be emotionally vulnerable." And Lisa Hayworth pleaded guilty to 14 counts of conspiracy, falsification of records, and accepting bribes. She's been sentenced to 8 years in federal prison and permanent loss of her social work license. Chen leaned back in her chair. "Ryan, I want you to know, this case has triggered a complete overhaul of CPS procedures across 5 states. Your daughter's courage to speak up has literally changed how we investigate child misuse cases. The ripple effects have been extensive. Congressional hearings on military family support systems, new protocols for background checks on civilian contractors working on military bases, mandatory training for social workers on identifying corruption in their own departments. What about plea deals for Vexley? His attorney tried everything: claims of mental illness, attempts to blame the sufferers' families, even suggesting this was all some elaborate conspiracy against him. But the evidence is overwhelming. Audio recordings, financial documents, testimony from 7 families, and his own recorded admissions. Chen smiled grimly. We're seeking 25 to 30 years minimum. Timeline? Sentencing is next week. Based on federal guidelines and the scope of his crimes, he'll likely die in prison. That evening, Ryan attended Emily's school play, where she portrayed a brave princess who saves her kingdom from a dragon. The metaphor wasn't lost on anyone in the audience who knew their story. Emily had insisted on helping write additional dialogue for her character lines about protecting other children and making sure monsters couldn't hurt families anymore. After the performance, as Emily took her bow and her handmade costume, Ryan saw Julia sitting in the back row. She'd completed 9 months of court-ordered therapy and parenting classes. The supervised visits had been going well, but Emily was still cautious about rebuilding their relationship completely. "Dad, did you see Mommy clapping?" Emily asked as they walked to the car. "I did. She looked very proud of you. Do you think she's really better now?" Ryan considered his answer carefully. "I think your mother is working very hard to become the parent you deserve. But remember what Dr. Walsh taught you: trust is something that gets rebuilt slowly through actions over time. I know, I miss having a regular family sometimes." "I understand, sweetheart. But you know what? Our family might look different now, but it's built on truth and safety. That's what matters most." 3 weeks later, Brandon Vexley was sentenced to 32 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. The judge noted that his crimes represented a systematic betrayal of the families who serve our country, and that his targeting of military children constituted an attack on our most vulnerable citizens. In her sentencing statement, Judge Martinez said, "Mr. Vexley, you exploited the very sacrifices that military families make for our freedom. You turned their service into vulnerability and their children into sufferers. The children you harmed showed more courage in testifying against you than you have shown in your entire adult life." As Vexley was led away in shackles, he never once looked at the families he destroyed. Ryan felt a sense of closure watching the man who had terrorized his daughter disappear behind steel doors. The corruption investigation continued expanding. Federal agents had uncovered similar schemes at 3 other military installations, leading to additional arrests and the exposure of a network of hunters who specifically targeted military families during deployment cycles. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, Emily's therapist, later wrote a research paper on the case that became required reading in social work programs nationwide. She documented how hunters like Vexley weaponize the unique stresses of military life and how communities can better protect children during vulnerable periods. Emily's case became a textbook example of resilience, Dr. Walsh told Ryan during one of their follow-up sessions. Her willingness to keep telling the truth, even when adults didn't believe her, literally saved other children from similar misuse. That night, Emily sat at their kitchen table working on a school project about heroes. She'd chosen to write about military families and the people who protect them. "Dad, Mrs. Patterson said you help other military families now through your new job?" Ryan looked up from his laptop. He'd accepted a position with the Veterans Defense Network, developing protocols for protecting military children during deployment cycles. His military communications background had translated well into coordinating between legal advocates, social services, and military commands. "I do. We've helped 12 families in the past 6 months. Are their kids okay now?" "Most of them. We help make sure they get the protection and support they need, and that the people who hurt them face consequences." Emily nodded approvingly, then asked quietly, "Do you think people like Brandon know they're evil when they're doing bad things?" Ryan considered the question seriously. Emily deserved honest answers, not platitudes. "I think some people convince themselves that what they're doing is okay. They make excuses and blame other people instead of taking responsibility for their choices. But deep down, yes, I think they know." "Then why do they keep doing it?" "Because they care more about getting what they want than about the people they hurt. And because they think they're smart enough not to get caught, but they're wrong. Eventually, yes, truth has a way of coming out, especially when brave people like you refuse to stay quiet." Emily smiled and returned to her project. Ryan watched her write with careful, confident strokes. No trembling, no fear. Just a determined little girl who had faced down a monster and won. His daughter was healing. she was safe. She was home. And most importantly, she had learned that speaking the truth, even when it was hard, even when adults didn't initially believe her, was the most powerful weapon against the darkness. Brandon Vexley would spend the rest of his life learning that some lines should never be crossed. Emily would grow up knowing that when evil tried to silence her, she had the courage to speak louder. Justice, Ryan had learned, wasn't just about punishment. Sometimes it was about giving sufferers their voices back. Sometimes it was about making sure that one child's courage could protect countless others. And sometimes it was simply about a father coming home when his daughter needed him most.